Arizona Territory, 1875. The merciless desert sun cast long shadows across Timber Creek as the funeral procession made its slow journey to the town cemetery. 21-year-old Zara Kavanaugh clutched a handkerchief in her trembling fingers, her ivory skin pale against the black mourning dress that had become her prison these past 3 days. The soft breeze caught her honey-blonde hair, which she had hastily pinned beneath a black bonnet, loose tendrils escaping as if reaching for freedom she herself could not grasp. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, the preacher droned on, his words lost to her grief. Her husband of barely 2 years, Thomas, had met his end in the silver mine collapse that had claimed 5 men. At 21, Zara was already a widow in a territory that devoured the weak and unprepared. She had no family here, no true friends beyond the sympathetic nods of townspeople who would soon return to their own concerns. The harsh truth of the frontier had revealed itself to Zara. Love was a luxury the West did not permit. Love meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant death in this unforgiving land. She had arrived 2 years prior with dreams of building a life alongside her ambitious husband, only to stand now at his grave, those dreams buried alongside him. Mrs. Kavanaugh, the banker, Mr. Holbrook, approached as the last of the mourners dispersed. My deepest condolences. When you're ready to discuss your husband's affairs, please visit my office. There are matters requiring attention. His tone told her everything she needed to know. Thomas had borrowed heavily to invest in that mine claim. Now she would likely lose their small cabin at the edge of town. Another cruel lesson from the frontier. Sentiment was no match for survival. Thank you, she whispered, her gaze fixed on the fresh mound of earth. She would endure. She would survive. But she would never again mistake this wild country for a place where hearts could safely open. 3 weeks later, Zara stood in the dusty thoroughfare of Timber Creek, clutching her few remaining possessions wrapped in a faded quilt. The banker had been polite but unmovable. The cabin was forfeit. Her remaining coins would perhaps buy passage on the eastbound stagecoach, back to a Pennsylvania she barely remembered. But even that seemed uncertain. The late afternoon sun beat down mercilessly as she peered up and down the street, momentarily disoriented by grief and exhaustion. Where was she to go? What direction offered any hope? Ma'am, you look like you might be needing some assistance. The voice came from behind her, gentle but assured. Zara turned to find herself looking up into the clear blue eyes of a young man she recognized vaguely from around town. He couldn't have been much older than 25, with wheat-colored hair and a face that spoke of days under open skies. His light stubble caught the sunlight, and though his clothes were trail-worn, they were clean and well-kept. He sat atop a chestnut quarter horse, regarding her with genuine concern. Zara faltered, and used to kindness from strangers. I am quite all right, thank you. The young cowboy tilted his hat back slightly, revealing more of those startling blue eyes. Begging your pardon, but you don't appear all right. Standing in the street with your belongings, looking. He hesitated. Looking lost. I am not lost, she replied with more sharpness than intended. I am merely considering my options. Fair enough. He nodded respectfully. I'm Kieran Calloway. I manage the Circle S ranch for Mr. Stillwell about 10 miles west of here. I recall seeing you at church some Sundays past. Zara Kavanaugh, she replied automatically, then added, Mrs. Thomas Kavanaugh. Understanding dawned in his eyes. The mine collapse. I heard. I'm truly sorry for your loss, Mrs. Kavanaugh. His sincerity caught her off guard, and she looked away to hide the sudden moisture in her eyes. When she regained her composure, she found him still watching her, patient and undemanding. Thank you, Mr. Calloway, she managed. Now if you'll excuse me. Of course. But. He hesitated, seemingly weighing his next words carefully. Where are you headed? The simple question undid her. Where was she headed? East to a family who had disowned her for marrying Thomas? To another town to work as what? A seamstress? A saloon girl? The cruel options of a widowed woman in the West crashed upon her. I don't know, she whispered, the admission itself a defeat. I suppose I am lost after all. Kieran Calloway studied her for a long moment, his eyes revealing neither pity nor judgment, only thoughtful consideration. Then follow me home, he said simply. Zara stiffened. Sir, I hardly think. To the Stillwell Ranch, he clarified quickly, a flush crossing his tanned cheeks. Mrs. Stillwell has been looking for help with the house and her young ones since her last girl left to get married. It's honest work, good pay, and a roof over your head while you decide what comes next. The offer hung in the air between them. A chance, however temporary. An alternative to the eastbound stage or worse options. "Why would you help me?" she asked, suspicion born of hard lessons clouding her voice. "Because out here, we help when we can," he answered. "The West takes enough without us turning away from each other." Something in his straightforward manner broke through her defenses. She was alone, adrift, and here was an unexpected lifeline. "Very well, Mr. Calloway," she said finally. "I accept your offer, though I have no horse." His face brightened with a smile that transformed his features from handsome to almost boyishly charming. "We can remedy that. Wait here." Within the hour, Zara found herself on a borrowed mare, following the steady figure of Kieran Calloway out of Timber Creek toward the western horizon. Each hoofbeat took her further from the grave of her husband and the ruins of her brief marriage. She told herself it was merely practicality that made her accept this stranger's help. In a land that had already proven how little it cared for dreams and love, survival was the only sensible goal. The journey to the Circle S ranch revealed a different side of the Arizona territory than Zara had experienced in town. The vast landscape opened before them as they rode, crimson-painted buttes and mesas standing sentinel against the deepening blue of the evening sky. Despite herself, she felt something stir within her. Not hope, certainly not that fragile emotion, but perhaps a quiet wonder at the savage beauty surrounding them. "First time out of town?" Kieran asked, breaking a comfortable silence that had settled between them. "Thomas was always working," she replied, the words bitter in her mouth. There never seemed time for rides into the countryside. Kieran nodded, his expression thoughtful. "The territory has its harsh ways, that's God's truth. But there's beauty here too, if you've eyes to see it." "Beauty doesn't fill the stomach or keep the cold at bay," she countered. "No," he agreed with surprising solemnity. "It doesn't. But sometimes it reminds us why we keep fighting to survive." The observation was unexpected, and Zara found herself studying her companion with new interest. Kieran Calloway struck her as a contradiction, young in years but somehow settled in his skin in a way her husband never had been. Thomas had always been chasing the next opportunity, the next claim, the next stroke of luck that would make them rich. This young cowboy seemed content with the land and sky around him. As dusk painted the landscape in purple shadows, the lights of the Circle S became visible in the distance. The ranch was larger than Zara had anticipated, a sprawling main house with several outbuildings, corrals, and a substantial barn. As they approached, a woman emerged onto the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. "That's Mrs. Stillwell," Kieran explained. "Her husband's away in Tucson on business this month. She's managing the household and their 4 children alone." Nervousness fluttered in Zara's stomach. What if Mrs. Stillwell didn't want a stranger in her home? What if Kieran had overstepped? But as they dismounted in the yard, Eleanor Stillwell's face broke into a relieved smile. "Kieran Calloway, you've brought salvation itself," she called, hurrying down the porch steps. "Please tell me this young lady is considering the position." Before Kieran could answer, a crash sounded from inside the house, followed by a child's wail. Mrs. Stillwell closed her eyes briefly. "That would be James knocking over the washstand again," she said with the weary patience of a mother of 4. "Mrs. Kavanaugh, I don't know you, but if you can cook, clean, and help with children who seem determined to destroy everything they touch, I will consider you heaven sent." Despite everything, Zara found herself smiling for the first time in weeks. "I can do all 3, Mrs. Stillwell. And please, call me Zara." "Bless you," the older woman said fervently, then cast a grateful glance at Kieran. "And bless you for finding her, Kieran. Now come inside, both of you. Supper's nearly ready, if the children haven't upended the stove." As Mrs. Stillwell hurried back inside to address the crisis, Kieran offered Zara a small smile. "See, Providence provides. Or desperate women accept whatever circumstances offer," she countered, but without the edge her words would have carried hours before. Kieran's expression grew serious. "Mrs. Kavanaugh, Zara, I know you've no reason to trust the kindness of strangers, but you're safe here. The Stillwells are good people, and I would never have brought you otherwise." The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. For a brief moment, their eyes held, and Zara felt a whisper of something she quickly suppressed. This was not about finding connection. This was about survival. "Thank you, Mr. Calloway," she said formally, breaking the moment. For the opportunity. The weeks that followed established a new rhythm for Zara. The chaos of the Stillwell household, with 4 children ranging from 3 to 10 years old, left little time for grief or rumination. She rose before dawn to help with breakfast, managed the endless cycle of laundry, cleaning, and mending, assisted Mrs. Stillwell with the garden, and collapsed exhausted each night in the small but comfortable room that had become hers. To her surprise, the work brought a measure of peace. The children's uncomplicated affection and Mrs. Stillwell's warm gratitude began to thaw something within her that had frozen the day Thomas died. The ranch itself became a sanctuary of sorts, its routines a balm to her wounded spirit. And then there was Kieran. Though his duties as ranch foreman kept him busy from sunup to sundown, their paths crossed regularly. He took his meals with the family when not out on the range, and Zara found herself looking forward to his presence at the dinner table. He had a way with the children, patient and good-humored, and often brought small treasures for them. Interesting rocks, a hawk's feather, once a tiny carved wooden horse for little James. She learned he had come west at 17, worked his way up from ranch hand to foreman through steady competence rather than bravado. The other hands respected him, and Mr. Stillwell trusted him implicitly. "You're different from most men I've met out here," she observed one evening as they sat on the porch. The children were finally asleep, and Mrs. Stillwell had retired early with a headache, leaving Zara to finish mending by lamplight. Kieran had appeared with coffee for them both. "How so?" he asked, settling into the chair beside her. "You seem—" She searched for the right word. "Content. Most men I've known in the territory are always chasing something just beyond reach." Kieran considered this, watching the distant play of heat lightning over the mountains. "I suppose I learned early that chasing what you don't have often blinds you to the good already in your grasp," he said finally. "My father was like that, always dreaming of striking it rich, moving us from place to place. He died still searching, leaving my mother with 5 children and not enough land to feed us." "I'm sorry," Zara said softly. He shrugged, but she could see the old pain beneath the gesture. "It taught me what matters. A good day's work. Land that sustains you. People you can count on. Not fortune and adventure?" she asked, thinking of Thomas and his endless schemes. "Fortune is fickle in the West," Kieran replied. "And adventure?" He glanced at her, then away. "Adventure has its place. But a man needs roots too." Something in his tone made her heart beat faster, and she deliberately focused on her stitching. "Thomas never understood that," she found herself saying. "He was always certain the next claim would be the one to make us rich." "Is that what you wanted? Riches?" There was no judgment in his question, only genuine curiosity. "No," she admitted. "I wanted a home. Children. Stability." She stopped, surprised at her own candor. "I suppose that makes me quite dull." "It makes you wise," he corrected gently. "Those are things worth wanting." Their eyes met in the soft lamplight, and for a dangerous moment, Zara felt a connection that went beyond friendly conversation. Kieran seemed to feel it too, for he cleared his throat and stood abruptly. "It's getting late. I should let you finish your mending." "Yes," she agreed, relief and disappointment warring within her. "Good night, Mr. Calloway." "Kieran," he said quietly. "After all this time, I think you might call me Kieran." After he left, Zara sat motionless, needle forgotten in her hand. This was not what she had come here for. She had come to survive, to rebuild her life through practical means. Not to feel this dangerous warmth whenever a certain cowboy smiled at her. The frontier had already taught her its harsh lesson about love. She would not make the same mistake twice. The arrival of September brought cooler temperatures and the return of Mr. Stillwell from his business in Tucson. A tall, hearty man with a booming laugh, he welcomed Zara's presence with enthusiasm. "My Eleanor tells me you've been a godsend," he declared over dinner their first night back. "Says the children mind you better than they do her." "That's hardly true," Zara demurred, though she had indeed formed a special bond with the Stillwell children, especially 7-year-old Emma, who followed her everywhere. "Nonsense. We're lucky to have you." He turned to his wife. "Did you tell her about the harvest dance?" Mrs. Stillwell brightened. "I nearly forgot. The annual harvest dance is next Saturday at the Wilsons' barn. Everyone within 20 miles attends. You must come with us, Zara. Oh, I couldn't possibly. Of course you can, Mrs. Stillwell insisted. You haven't had a day off since you arrived. Besides, it's high time you met more of our neighbors. From across the table, Kieran caught her eye. The harvest dance is quite something, he said. Good food, good music. You should go. Something in his expression, hopeful, nervous, made her reconsider her refusal. Very well, she conceded. Though I have nothing suitable to wear. Mrs. Stillwell waved this concern away. We're nearly of a size. I have just the dress, blue calico that would complement your coloring beautifully. And so it was decided. Despite her misgivings, Zara found herself looking forward to the event. She had not danced since her wedding, had not participated in any social gathering since Thomas's death. Perhaps it was time to rejoin the world of the living, if only for one evening. The night of the dance arrived clear and cool, with a half-moon illuminating the landscape as their wagon made its way to the Wilson Ranch. Mrs. Stillwell had been right about the dress. The blue calico with its white piping flattered Zara's fair complexion and honey-blonde hair, which she had arranged in a simple but elegant style. Kieran rode alongside the wagon, and Zara caught him glancing her way more than once. He had cleaned up impressively for the occasion, wearing a fresh white shirt under a dark vest, his usual worn hat replaced by a newer one. He had shaved close, and his hair was neatly trimmed. The transformation from hard-working cowboy to handsome young man about town was striking. The Wilson barn had been transformed with lanterns and autumn decorations. A small band played lively tunes in one corner, and tables groaned with food and drink. It seemed the entire countryside had turned out. Ranchers, farmers, townspeople from Timber Creek, all mingling in a rare display of frontier conviviality. Quite the gathering, Zara observed as Kieran helped her down from the wagon. Wait until they start the Virginia reel, he replied with a grin. Old Mr. Finch gets so excited he knocked over a lantern last year. Nearly burned the place down. The image made her laugh, and Kieran's expression warmed at the sound. Before she could say more, Mrs. Stillwell whisked her away to meet what felt like every woman in the territory. To Zara's surprise, she was welcomed without reservation, her status as a widow acknowledged with sympathy but not made the center of her identity. As the evening progressed, she found herself genuinely enjoying the music, the conversation, the sense of community that had been absent in her life for so long. When the band struck up a waltz, however, she retreated to the edge of the dancing area, content to watch others. May I have this dance? She turned to find Kieran standing beside her, hand extended, his expression a careful blend of hope and respect. I haven't danced since. She faltered. I understand, he said gently. But perhaps it's time to try again? The question seemed to encompass more than just dancing. Zara studied his face, finding nothing there but genuine regard. What harm could one dance do? Very well, she said, placing her hand in his. His palm was warm and calloused from ranch work, but his touch was light as he led her onto the floor. He placed his other hand at her waist with proper decorum, maintaining a respectful distance between them as they began to move with the music. You dance well, she noted, surprised by his grace. My mother insisted all her sons learn, he explained with a sheepish smile. Said no son of hers would stomp around a dance floor like a wounded buffalo. The image made Zara laugh again, and some of her tension eased. As they circled the floor, she became aware of curious glances and approving smiles from the other dancers. The young widow and the respected foreman. She could almost hear the whispers. People are watching, she murmured. Let them, Kieran replied, his blue eyes steady on hers. I'm only concerned with one person's opinion tonight. The directness of his gaze sent warmth spreading through her chest. This was dangerous territory. And yet, as they continued to dance, Zara found herself unwilling to retreat from it. When the music ended, he didn't immediately release her hand. Would you walk outside with me? It's rather warm in here. The propriety of such a request was questionable, but Zara found herself nodding. They slipped out through the barn doors into the cool night air, where several other couples and small groups had gathered for respite from the heat and noise inside. They walked a short distance to where the Wilsons' apple orchard began, the trees silvered by moonlight. The music from the barn provided a distant backdrop to the chorus of night insects. I've wanted to speak with you privately, Kieran began, his usual confidence seemingly replaced by nervousness. About something important. Alarm bells rang in Zara's mind. This was precisely the kind of moment she had been avoiding. Mr. Calloway. Kieran, I'm not sure this is appropriate. Please, he said, his voice low and earnest. Just hear me out. Against her better judgment, Zara nodded. I know you came to the Circle S simply seeking work and shelter, he began carefully. And I know the loss you've suffered is still fresh. But these past months, getting to know you, seeing your strength, your kindness with the children, your quiet dignity, I find myself thinking of you more than is probably wise. Kieran, she interrupted, fear making her voice sharper than intended. Don't say things you'll regret. I won't regret them, he countered gently. Even if you don't feel the same, I need you to know that I care for you, Zara. Deeply. The moonlight revealed every sincere line of his expression, and Zara felt her carefully constructed defenses beginning to crumble. The West is no place for such feelings, she said, repeating the mantra that had become her shield. Love is a luxury we can't afford out here. Surely you know that. I disagree, he replied, surprising her with his firmness. It's precisely because life is hard and uncertain that love matters more, not less. Finding someone to face the frontier with, someone who makes the struggle worthwhile. That's not weakness, Zara. That's strength. His words struck at the very foundation of the belief that had protected her since Thomas's death. If love wasn't a dangerous indulgence, but a necessary strength, what did that mean for the walls she'd built? I can't, she whispered, though whether to him or herself, she wasn't certain. I can't risk that pain again. Kieran took a step closer, close enough that she could see the conflicting emotions in his eyes, hope battling with respect for her boundaries. I'm not asking for promises tonight, he said gently. Only that you consider the possibility that what happened with Thomas isn't the only way a story can unfold. That perhaps, when you're ready, you might allow yourself to feel again. Before she could respond, shouts erupted from the direction of the barn. They turned to see people spilling out, pointing toward the eastern horizon where an ominous orange glow illuminated the night sky. Fire, someone yelled. Fire at the Circle S. The words hit Zara like physical blows. The ranch. The children, left with a young nursemaid for the evening. All in danger. Kieran's expression transformed instantly from tender suitor to decisive leader. I'll get the horses, he said, already moving. Tell the Stillwells. The ride back to the ranch was a nightmarish blur. Mr. Stillwell drove the wagon at breakneck speed with his wife and Zara clinging to the sides, while Kieran and several other men from the dance rode ahead on horseback. The glow grew larger as they approached, and Zara's heart pounded with fear for the children. They arrived to find the barn fully engulfed in flames, the fire threatening to spread to nearby structures, including the main house. Ranch hands were already forming a bucket brigade from the well, while others tried to lead panicked horses from the burning stable. The children, Mrs. Stillwell cried as they pulled up. Safe with Jenny in the house, called one of the hands. But we're losing the barn, and maybe the corrals. The next hours were chaos and desperation. Zara joined the bucket line, passing water from hand to hand, her fine dress ruined by smoke and sweat. Kieran seemed to be everywhere at once, organizing the men, saving livestock, directing the battle against the hungry flames. By dawn, the fire was finally contained, though the barn was a total loss and one of the corrals badly damaged. Miraculously, only 2 horses had been lost, and no people were seriously injured beyond minor burns and smoke inhalation. As the sun rose over the smoking ruins, Zara found Kieran sitting exhausted on an overturned barrel, his face blackened with soot, his once clean shirt torn and filthy. Without thinking, she brought him a dipper of water from the well. You saved the ranch, she said as he drank gratefully. We all did, he corrected, his voice hoarse from shouting and smoke. You worked the bucket line all night without rest. I saw you, she shrugged. This is my home too. The words had slipped out unplanned, but as she said them, Zara realized their truth. Somehow, in these months, the Circle S had indeed become home, and these people, family. Kieran studied her face, a new light dawning in his tired eyes. Before he could speak, Mr. Stillwell approached, his expression grave. Kieran, this wasn't an accident, he said without preamble. Jenkins found lantern oil poured along the back wall of the barn. Someone set this deliberately. The implications settled heavily over them. An enemy. A threat still present. Who would do such a thing? Zara asked, horrified. Mr. Stillwell's face darkened. I have my suspicions. The Rayburn outfit has been pressing me to sell water rights to the East Creek. When I refused last month in Tucson, there were threats. Rayburn, Zara repeated, the name striking a chord of memory. Amos Rayburn, the man who owned shares in the Silver Strike mine. Both men turned to her in surprise. You know him? Kieran asked. Not personally, but he was Thomas's partner in the mine. After the collapse, he never came to offer condolences. I remember Thomas saying Rayburn had interests all over the territory. Stillwell and Kieran exchanged significant looks. Rayburn's been buying up water rights and small ranches for years, Stillwell explained, building himself an empire. The Circle S sits between his main property and the railroad. He's made offers before, but this time he's not asking, Kieran finished grimly. He's taking. A chill ran down Zara's spine despite the morning heat. The peace she had found at the Circle S was suddenly threatened by the same greedy forces that had widowed her. What will you do? She asked Stillwell. The rancher squared his shoulders. Fight, of course. This land has been in Eleanor's family for 20 years. I won't surrender it to threats and intimidation. You'll need proof it was Rayburn, Kieran pointed out, and witnesses if it comes to legal action. Then we'll get proof, Stillwell said decisively. Kieran, ride to town and bring back Sheriff Coleman. We'll make a formal complaint. He turned to Zara. Mrs. Kavanaugh, would you be willing to provide a statement about Rayburn's connection to your late husband? It might establish a pattern. Of course, she agreed, though the thought of revisiting Thomas's death made her stomach clench. Anything to protect the ranch. Kieran caught her eye, concern evident in his gaze. This could become dangerous, he warned quietly. Rayburn isn't known for restraint when crossed. I'm already involved, she replied with a steadiness that surprised even herself. This is my home now. These people are my family. The admission cost her something, acknowledging attachments she had sworn never to form again, but it felt right. After Kieran departed for town, Zara helped Mrs. Stillwell settle the still frightened children and begin assessing the damage to their stores and equipment. The work kept her hands busy, but her mind raced with implications. If Rayburn had indeed targeted the Stillwells, and if he was connected to the mine that had claimed Thomas's life, were these events truly separate? Or was there a darker pattern she hadn't recognized? Sheriff Coleman arrived that afternoon, a weathered man with shrewd eyes who listened carefully to their accounts of the fire and examined the evidence of arson. He took statements from everyone, including Zara's testimony about Rayburn's connection to the mine. Circumstantial, he concluded, scratching his grizzled chin, but concerning, given Rayburn's reputation. I'll pay him a visit, make it clear he's being watched, but without direct evidence or witnesses. So he gets away with it, Mrs. Stillwell said bitterly. For now, the sheriff qualified, but I'll be watching him, and I suggest you all do the same. Post guards at night. Don't let anyone approach who isn't known to you. After he departed, the mood at the ranch grew tense. Mr. Stillwell organized the hands into watch shifts. The children were kept close to the house. Even daily chores took on a watchful quality, with everyone alert to unusual sounds or movements. That evening, as Zara helped Mrs. Stillwell with dinner preparations, Kieran appeared at the kitchen door. May I speak with you? He asked Zara quietly. They stepped onto the back porch, where the setting sun painted the distant mountains in hues of gold and purple. Despite the beauty, Kieran's expression remained troubled. What is it? Zara asked, concern mounting. While I was in town, I made some inquiries about the mine collapse, he began carefully. About Thomas. Zara stiffened. Why would you do that? Because something about Rayburn's connection bothered me, he explained. The timing, the targeting of the Stillwells specifically. And, she prompted when he hesitated. Kieran took a deep breath. The mine inspector's report indicated the collapse wasn't simply bad luck. Support beams had been compromised, cut partway through so they'd eventually fail under pressure. The world seemed to tilt beneath Zara's feet. Are you saying the collapse was deliberate? That Thomas was murdered? I'm saying it's possible, Kieran replied gravely. And if Rayburn wanted control of the mine without paying his partners, he could have arranged the collapse, Zara finished, her voice barely above a whisper. The implications crashed over her in waves. Thomas hadn't died in a tragic accident. He had been killed, sacrificed to someone's greed. There's more, Kieran continued reluctantly. Thomas filed a claim notice the week before the collapse, a water claim on Cottonwood Creek. The same creek Rayburn has been trying to secure from Stillwell. The pieces aligned with horrible clarity. Thomas had unknowingly threatened Rayburn's plans. The mine collapse had eliminated that threat. And now, with Thomas's widow working at the Stillwell ranch, Rayburn was moving against them too. He'll come back, Zara said with sudden certainty. The fire was just the beginning. Kieran nodded grimly. I think so too. Which is why I want you to consider leaving, at least until this is resolved. I have a sister in Prescott who would welcome you. Leave? The suggestion struck her like a physical blow. You want me to run away? I want you safe, he corrected, his voice dropping. Rayburn is dangerous, and now we have reason to believe he's already responsible for one death connected to you. I couldn't bear it if. He stopped abruptly, emotion making his voice rough. The naked concern in his eyes stirred something deep within Zara. Not just gratitude, but a responding warmth she had been denying for months. I won't run, she said firmly. Not from Rayburn, not from the truth about Thomas, and not from. She faltered, then gathered her courage. Not from what's beginning between us. Kieran's expression transformed, hope replacing worry. Zara, he began, stepping closer. But whatever he intended to say was cut short by the sound of approaching riders, many of them moving fast. They turned to see a cloud of dust on the road, revealing a dozen mounted men heading directly for the ranch house. It's Rayburn, Kieran said grimly, immediately shifting from suitor to protector. Get inside. Tell Stillwell. I'll alert the hands. The confrontation that followed would remain seared in Zara's memory for years to come. Amos Rayburn proved to be a corpulent man with cold eyes and a falsely genial manner, flanked by gunmen whose expressions left no doubt about their willingness to use violence. Just a neighborly visit, Rayburn announced from horseback as the Stillwells and their people gathered on the porch. His gaze swept over them, pausing when it reached Zara. A flash of recognition crossed his features. Well now, isn't this interesting? Mrs. Kavanaugh, if I'm not mistaken. Thomas's widow. Mr. Rayburn, she acknowledged coldly. Tragic business, the mine, he said with transparently false sympathy. Such dangerous work. Especially when support beams are sabotaged, she replied evenly. A flicker of something, surprise, alarm, crossed his face before his mask of affability returned. I'm sure I don't know what you mean. Mining accidents are regrettably common. State your business, Rayburn, Stillwell cut in, his rifle held casually but visibly at his side. As direct as ever, Stillwell, Rayburn chuckled, though no humor reached his eyes. Very well. I've come to make you a final offer for this property. Double what I proposed in Tucson. A generous sum, considering recent misfortunes. His gaze flicked meaningfully toward the burned barn. Not interested, Stillwell replied flatly. Not at any price. Reconsider, Rayburn urged, his genial tone hardening. The territory can be dangerous for stubborn men and their families. Is that a threat? Kieran stepped forward, his hand near his holstered revolver. A statement of fact, Rayburn replied. Bad things happen. Fires. Accidents. Much like poor Thomas Kavanaugh experienced. The admission, for that's what it was, hung in the air like smoke. No one moved. You just confessed to murder, Zara said into the silence, her heart pounding but her voice steady. In front of witnesses. For the first time, Rayburn looked genuinely startled. I admitted no such thing. I think the sheriff will disagree. Came a new voice from behind Rayburn's group. Sheriff Coleman emerged from the gathering dusk, accompanied by 4 deputies. Especially considering I heard every word of this conversation. The trap had been perfectly executed. While Kieran had gone to town ostensibly to fetch the sheriff, they had actually arranged this ambush, anticipating Rayburn would make another move against the ranch. The sheriff had hidden his approach, allowing Rayburn to incriminate himself. What followed was chaos. 2 of Rayburn's men drew weapons and were immediately shot by the deputies. Rayburn himself attempted to flee but was dragged from his horse by Kieran, who delivered a single, decisive blow to the larger man's jaw, dropping him unconscious to the dust. By nightfall, Rayburn and his surviving men were in custody, charged with arson, attempted murder, and, based on Zara's testimony and the mine inspector's revised report, the murder of Thomas Kavanaugh and the other miners. The ranch was safe. the threat eliminated. And yet, as Zara stood on the porch watching the sheriff's wagon disappear down the road with its prisoners, she felt strangely hollow. Justice for Thomas should have brought closure. Instead, it simply confirmed what she had slowly been realizing. Her marriage, for all its brief normality, had been built on shifting sand. Thomas had been pursuing dreams that put him in Rayburn's path, never recognizing the danger until it was too late. "Are you all right?" Kieran's voice came softly beside her. She turned to find him watching her with concern, his expression open and caring in a way Thomas's had never truly been. "I'm not sure," she admitted. "I thought learning the truth would help. Instead, I feel adrift," he supplied. "Like the story you told yourself about the past has changed, and now you're not sure what to believe." "Yes," she said, surprised by his perception. "Exactly that." Kieran hesitated, then gently took her hand. "Maybe it's not about what happened then," he suggested. "Maybe it's about what happens next." The touch of his hand grounded her, bringing her back to the present moment, to the home she had found, the people she had come to love, and this man whose steady presence had become essential to her sense of safety and belonging. "What happens next?" she echoed softly. "Zara," he began, his voice deepening with emotion. "I know this isn't the right moment. You've just confronted painful truths and old wounds. But I need you to know that my feelings haven't changed. If anything, seeing your courage tonight only confirmed what I already knew, that you're the woman I want to build a life with when you're ready." The declaration hung between them, honest and unadorned. No flowery promises, no grand gestures, just the truth of his heart offered without expectation. In that moment, the belief that had protected Zara since Thomas's death, that love was a luxury the frontier didn't permit, finally crumbled completely. Standing before her was living proof of its falsehood. Kieran Calloway, with his steady strength and gentle heart, represented everything the West could be at its best. Not just harsh survival, but community, connection, and yes, even love. "I don't know if I'm ready," she whispered truthfully. "But I know that I care for you, Kieran. More than I thought possible. More than I allowed myself to admit." His face transformed with hope. "That's enough for now," he said softly. "We have time." And standing there in the gathering darkness, Zara believed him. Spring arrived at the Circle S with a riot of wildflowers and new beginnings. The rebuilt barn stood stronger than before. The winter wheat promised a bountiful harvest, and the Stillwell children had grown inches since the previous autumn. Zara sat on the front porch, mending basket at her side forgotten as she watched Kieran in the corral, working with a spirited young mare. The months since Rayburn's arrest had passed in a gradual, gentle courtship. Riding together on Sunday afternoons, long conversations by the fire, his steady presence a constant she had come to cherish. Rayburn's trial had concluded in February with a conviction and sentence of hanging, bringing final justice for Thomas and the other minors. The process had been painful but cleansing, allowing Zara to truly say goodbye to her first husband and the brief, troubled marriage they had shared. "He's good with horses," Mrs. Stillwell observed, settling onto the porch swing beside Zara. "Good with children, too. Would be a fine father someday." Zara flushed at the not-so-subtle hint. "Eleanor, please." "What?" the older woman asked innocently. "I'm merely making an observation about our foreman's qualities. If certain young widows choose to take note, that's hardly my concern." "You're impossible," Zara laughed, but without heat. The Stillwells had made no secret of their approval of the developing relationship between her and Kieran. "I'm practical," Mrs. Stillwell corrected. "Life is short and often hard out here. When happiness presents itself, only a fool turns away." She patted Zara's hand affectionately. "And you, my dear, are no fool." Before Zara could respond, they heard the sound of an approaching wagon. Mr. Stillwell emerged from the house to join them on the porch as Kieran abandoned his horse training to greet the visitor. It was Sheriff Coleman, looking official but not alarming as he pulled his wagon to a stop. "Ladies, Stillwell," he nodded in greeting. "Calloway." "Sheriff," Kieran acknowledged. "What brings you out this way?" "Official business of a sort." The sheriff reached into his coat and withdrew an envelope. This came from Mrs. Kavanaugh, from the territorial governor's office in Prescott. Seemed important enough to deliver personally. Zara accepted the envelope with puzzled thanks. What business could the governor possibly have with her? As the men engaged the sheriff in conversation about recent territory news, Zara broke the seal and unfolded the formal document within. Her eyes widened as she read. "What is it?" Mrs. Stillwell asked, noting her expression. "It's about Thomas's water claim on Cottonwood Creek," Zara explained, still processing the information. "The one Rayburn killed him for. The territorial court has recognized it as valid and awarded ownership to me as his widow. I own the water rights to the entire eastern section of the creek." The implications were significant. Those water rights were valuable, not just financially, but strategically for the Circle S, which had always relied on Stillwell's partial claim to the creek. Kieran had turned at her words, his expression carefully neutral. "Congratulations," he said quietly. "That's valuable property. You could sell it for a substantial sum." Everyone fell silent, the unspoken question hanging in the air. Would she take her newfound wealth and leave? Return east perhaps, or build a life elsewhere? Zara looked at the faces around her, the Stillwells who had become family, the ranch that had become home, and Kieran, whose steady presence had healed her heart. The answer was suddenly, perfectly clear. "Mr. Stillwell," she said formally, "I'd like to propose a partnership. My water rights combined with your existing claim would secure the Circle S's future for generations." Stillwell's eyebrows rose. "That's generous, Mrs. Kavanaugh. But what would you want in return?" "A permanent place here," she replied simply. "Not as an employee, but as a partner in the ranch." "A home." "Done," Stillwell agreed immediately, his face breaking into a broad smile. "Though I suspect you might have more specific ideas about the nature of your permanent place here." His gaze flickered meaningfully toward Kieran. Zara felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she didn't look away from Kieran's intense gaze. Some things needed to be said privately. After the sheriff departed and the Stillwells tactfully retreated inside, Zara found herself alone with Kieran in the lengthening shadows of the spring afternoon. "You're staying," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. "Yes." She moved closer to him, courage growing with each step. "The water rights are valuable, but not as valuable as what I've found here. What I've found with you." Kieran took her hands in his expression open and vulnerable in a way that still amazed her. "Zara, I've been waiting for the right moment. Maybe this is it." He took a deep breath. "I love you. I want to build a life with you. Right here if that's what you want, or anywhere else if it's not. I just know I want us to face whatever comes together." The declaration was everything she had both feared and longed for. In this moment, with this man, Zara finally understood what Thomas had never grasped, that true wealth wasn't found in silver mines or land speculation, but in the steady companionship of someone who saw you clearly and loved you anyway. "I love you too," she whispered, the words coming easily now that she had stopped fighting them. "And yes, I want to build that life with you." Kieran's face transformed with joy. He drew her closer, one hand gently cupping her cheek, as if she were something precious and fragile. When his lips met hers, Zara felt the last of her defenses dissolve. This wasn't the desperate passion she had known with Thomas, but something deeper and more enduring, a love built on friendship, respect, and shared purpose. The autumn sun filtered through the chapel windows, casting golden light across the gathered congregation. Zara stood before the altar in a gown of cream silk, not morning black or debutante white, but a color that spoke of new beginnings with wisdom earned. Beside her, Kieran looked handsome and slightly nervous in his new suit, his eyes never leaving her face as they spoke their vows. The Stillwell children watched from the front pew, Emma proudly serving as flower girl, her brothers unusually subdued in their Sunday best. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the preacher concluded, beaming at the couple. "You may kiss your bride, Mr. Calloway." As Kieran's lips met hers, sealing their promise before God and community, Zara felt the circle of her journey complete. She had arrived in this territory a naive bride, become a grieving widow, found purpose as a determined survivor, and now stood as a woman who had chosen love with open eyes. Their wedding celebration spilled from the church onto the Circle S, where tables groaned with food and a fiddle player encouraged dancing long into the evening. As dusk approached, Kieran led his new wife away from the festivities toward the ridge that overlooked the ranch. "I have something to show you," he explained, helping her up the gentle slope. At the crest, Zara gasped. Just below, In a sheltered hollow with a view of both the ranch and the distant mountains stood a small cabin, newly built, with smoke curling from its chimney and windows glowing with lamplight. "Our home," Kieran said softly. "If you approve. Close enough to the main house for your work with the children, far enough for privacy. The hands and I built it over the summer." Tears sprang to Zara's eyes as she took in the perfect simplicity of it. A home built with love and understanding of who she was and what mattered to her. "It's perfect," she whispered, turning to embrace him. "Absolutely perfect." As the stars appeared one by one above them, Kieran gathered her close. "Welcome home, Mrs. Calloway." In his arms, surrounded by the beauty of the land they would steward together, Zara finally understood what had happened that day on Timber Creek's dusty street. She had indeed been lost, not geographically, but spiritually. Lost in grief, in fear, in the false belief that love was a luxury the frontier couldn't afford. And Kieran, with his quiet strength and patient heart, had shown her the way home, not just to a place, but to herself. To the truth that love wasn't a weakness on the frontier, but the very foundation that made its hardships bearable. As they walked hand in hand down to their waiting cabin, Zara thought of the words that had changed her life. "Then follow me home." And she had, not blindly, but with eyes open to both the dangers and the beauty of loving someone in this wild, unforgiving land. She had followed him home, and in doing so, had found her own path forward.